Codenext made easy. This is Codenext. It is an 1,100-page document, exceptionally complex, full of symbols and meanings that have to be looked up, with many meanings attached to a single code being given to a single lot. It is currently under review and consideration by the City of Austin for potential adoption at some point in April of next year. Let's take a look at the current draft. First, it is entirely too complex. In several of the town hall meetings that were held this year, city staff who have been working with this thing for months found it impossible to answer questions because of the complexity in the document. The big issue is it's based on flawed logic. The primary driver of the Codenext concept is that the city needs more density, and they are relying on that density to solve our problems with transportation and affordability. It will destroy our neighborhoods. When you look at the work that's done and the maps that have been prepared, they're basically destroying all the single-family home neighborhoods in Central Office, the neighborhoods that have been the core of Austin for so long, many of them with historic designations and histories of their own. And we're going to turn them into small units that basically will accommodate a single person, but no families. By destroying our neighborhoods, it will also destroy our schools and change the patterns of life within Austin irrevocably. It will not solve our problems. It will make them worse. The underlying philosophy of Codenext is increased density will solve our problems. But let's take a look at it. The fact is, this has never worked in a Sunbelt city. Increased density will worsen traffic. The fact that we have increased density in the city will put more vehicles and more people in a smaller area and will actually worsen the traffic. Increased density will make housing more expensive. The fact that we're going to take down existing housing and then replace it with newer housing and all the costs associated with that is going to move housing up. When asked about these things in the transportation meeting, the board that was presenting on behalf of Codenext had to admit that they knew of no case in a Sunbelt city where the proposals that are being presented here had actually worked in decreasing traffic. Likewise, talking separately to city staff, asking them how this increased density was somehow going to make housing less expensive, the answer we got back was, it doesn't work like that. In other words, this underlying philosophy does not work and will not work in our environment. What do we need? We need simplicity. We need a code that's understandable not only by lawyers and experts who spend their time studying it, by the average citizen of the city. It should have simple things like single-family residential, two-family residential, low-rise, etc. Those aren't necessarily the codes we need, but it should be something that's simple and easily understood. The thing that they have produced is so convoluted that it probably means very little and leaves pretty much everything up to the discretion of the city staff that will be handling the issues as they arrive under the code. Next, it needs to maintain our current neighborhood agreements. Many neighborhoods in Austin have established neighborhood agreements that have been accepted by the City Council that define what the development of the neighborhood should be and how it's going to be considered. Codenext completely ignores these neighborhood agreements and replaces them with its new drive for density in its new codes. And finally, we need to consider automatic delays in the building of large commercial development. One of the issues that's being cited is our transportation problems, particularly towards the centralized business that's been developing up in our central business district. By building in automatic delays of the constructions of new business operations within the central business district, we could slow this down while we have time for other factors to step in and make it much more acceptable to have this kind of a centralized environment. To solve the transportation problem, we need to look at a three-tiered layer of transportation. First is commuting. We pretty much have no commuting transportation system right now except for automobiles, with the exception of a few long bus lines and the train that runs up to Leander. Second, we need to look at area transportation. Area transportation would be, how do you get around in the immediate area, say within a 15-mile radius? We do have bus lines again that serve the areas, but as various people have pointed out, the ability to get a relatively short distance using the bus lines can take you many times the amount of time it takes to drive, and that's why a lot of people drive. And finally, the local, where you have a choice of walking or biking or getting around to your local areas. One of the things that makes Austin unique and so warm and welcoming to so many of us is the fact that we have choices to bike and to walk and to go to places. And a lot of people are going to do that. But to factor in that this is somehow going to replace a major part of our current traffic problem just isn't reasonable. We bring these three together. If we have a solution for commuting, a solution for area, and enhance the local transportation arrangement, we can actually solve Austin traffic flow problems. For commuting, we recommend something we call CHEST, Continuous High-Speed Elevated Self-Driving Transit. CHEST is designed to specifically meet our activities. What you see here is a picture of the airport transportation at DFW. The eventual CHEST system may or may not look anything like that. But here are the key elements. C, CHEST, continuing. It needs to be operational so that you can get on a vehicle within 2 minutes of arriving at a station. And you do not make stops, you get off at a destination and go on about your business. High speed, meaning it operates at 90 miles an hour or greater. Elevated. We do not have the money nor the willpower to go about actually condemning the property necessary to put in a high-speed system on the ground. And certainly, as you've seen over and over, the concept of taking away existing traffic lanes to do this is not going to fly with voters. Elevated transit that's running down existing right-of-ways gives us the opportunity to put this in at relatively low cost, sort of an erector set construction approach that allows us to use areas that are currently used for transportation for an additional form of transportation. S is self-operating. One of the biggest expenses in operating transit systems is the driver. We have absolutely no need for that driver right now. There is no issue whatsoever in creating a system like this that operates itself without drivers and reduces its costs substantially. And transit, in that its sole purpose is to move people from one spot to another spot at very high speeds. For the area transport, what's coming very quickly is autonomous vehicle service. Autonomous vehicles are running around our city right now. In the case of this Tesla shown here, you can put it into autopilot mode and it basically drives itself down the freeway right now. In the case of the Google self-driving cars, they're driving around autonomously right now. These will be readily available in a very short period of time, and then they will become service vehicles. Think something along the lines of Lyft or Uber, and the capability of ordering a vehicle, having it shown up. You will have said where you want to go. The vehicle will take you there and drop you off and go on to serve somebody else. There are a lot of reasons why this is better. According to a Princeton study, autonomous vehicles can improve traffic flow by up to 45%. And then local. As we've said before, walking, biking, skateboarding, or using the autonomous vehicle service provides the way to get around in your local area. Depending on your own personal capabilities, lifestyle choices, you will have the ability to do that. So we can solve the problems of transportation. We just need to get on with it. We need to be thinking about future approaches to solving these problems, not thinking about what things have been in the past and trying to solve the problems of the past. Affordability. We need to slow our density push to keep people in their existing homes. We need to let people stay in their existing homes, and we need to stop pushing these density theories that are an additional push towards the increased real estate values in the city as more and more developers and builders see the possibility for multi-unit developments from which they can make a lot of money. We need to develop low-cost housing developments. These probably will wind up not being in the center of the town, but in the out parts of town. So let's develop these developments with the commuting transportation to these developments. So our chest operations will run to these developments. And let's have incentives and services to support these developments going forward. What do we need to do now? First, we need a totally new direction for Codenext. We need to get away from the density push. We need to recognize the neighborhood agreements that are in effect, and we need to move on with the rewrite of the code in a new direction and pretty much totally make it changed from what we see now. If that's not easy to do, then forget the whole thing and stick with what we've got. It's not very good, but it's clearly better than what's being proposed. Next, let's work to bring an autonomous service to town. Let's become a haven for people that want to test autonomous vehicles, and let's encourage and do everything we can to get people to start testing autonomous services right here in Austin. This isn't going to happen today or tomorrow, but it's going to be here a lot quicker than most people think. Every time I've been asked over the last several years to predict when autonomous vehicles were coming, I underestimated how quickly they were coming. Next, an RFI creation for CHEST. We do not need the detailed requests for proposals that has typically been put out by governments telling bidders exactly what they're going to bid on. We don't need Texas Department of Transportation to come in and explain exactly what this is going to be. What we need to do is outline the requirements for the system and then let the bidders tell us how they can best meet these requirements. The strong possibility exists that we can find a contractor who would do a design build run using revenue municipal bonds in order to finance the construction and have this thing up and operating in less time than it took to build the MOPAC reconstruction. And then let's take a look at structural delays of development. Here we're talking specifically about commercial development in the core business district. Let's take a look at doing some structural delays so you get approval, but your approval isn't good for a year or something like that, in order to slow the centralization of the workplaces and allow us time to work the rest of this out and come up with a meaningful solution. We put all that together, and now we have a situation where we're beginning to solve Austin's largest problems. For more information, I encourage you to subscribe to this YouTube channel, Austin Future, for more information and changes as time goes on. In addition, we're going to be creating videos to explain the details that we're putting out here. One video that's coming very quickly is Austin's Future Transportation, which will give more detail on these transportation possibilities and what you can expect to see. Finally, for more information, email austinfuture@yahoo.com. Thank you for your time and consideration.